Welcome back to another episode of Sketch Nerds, where we break down sketch comedy. What works, what doesn't work, what we like, what we don't like, and why. Today, we will be talking about sketches from Funny or Die and Saturday Night Live. I'm your host, Andy Weld, and today I am joined by Seth Alcorn.
Hello.
Elizabeth E.K. Kemp.
Hi.
And our guest for today, Cam Wyllie. Oh, is Isaiah on the mic tonight?
Yes.
Take three.
Wow.
Don't worry.
Wow.
Don't worry about it.
I don't know. You're not always
keep
on.
going.
That doesn't look like white supremacy at all, Andy, does it?
Oh, this is the Post article is going to come out, say bad look for bad medicine, and that's it. That's it.
Wow. Wow.
The caboose on a comedy train is a position of privilege, and don't listen to what any of these guys say. You earned the spot.
The strongest joke is always last, Isaiah.
The closer.
Are you saying Isaiah's a joke, Andy?
Alrighty. Let's start with Cam. Cam, can you tell us about, you're coming to us live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Can you tell us about your background in comedy?
Sure. Well, I'm glad that Sketch Nerds is continuing to go international. I think Let's Hop an Ocean next. But a land border, pretty good, pretty impressive. So yeah, I'm located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I am mainly a sketch comedy guy. I've dabbled all over the place. I've been doing sketch for too long, not long enough. It's some days it feels like one, some days the other, but roughly 20 years, maybe. So I've seen the scene here ebb and flow, and I've managed to stay a part of it, which is pretty impressive. I got into this. There's actually a post-secondary comedy program here in Toronto, which I think is a rarity at a school called Humber College. And one of my best friends went through that program, and as he was graduating, he wanted to start a sketch comedy troupe, and he asked me to come join him because we were just two funny friends, and we loved to laugh and riff, and he just wanted to hang out with me. So I jumped in with a bunch of people he knew from his class, and that was my first sketch troupe. We were called Smells Like the 80s, and we were around for a little, just a little shy of a decade, I think. So we were around for a while. So we were around before we had any festivals in Toronto, and the scene was pretty much, there were shows that would accept sketch acts, but there were no sort of featured sketch nights. So it was very just nomadic. There wasn't a lot of overlap with troupes performing with other troupes. You'd kind of maybe see a name in like a newspaper print ad and maybe hear of other troupes, but unless you were star-crossed and booked on the same show, you would have no idea what your peers were doing. The idea of peers was a weird idea. Just you knew other people were doing it, but you didn't know what their style was or if you'd enjoy them or not. So that's kind of where I slid into the scene.
What would you describe as the style of Smells Like the 80s?
Oh, well, we were just, we started out as a group of five, and then we whittled down to a group of three white men, and then we just went up to four white men, and then back down to three white men, and then finished with four white men. So we were a bunch of just like young white guys, and this was, mid 2000s, mid to late. So it was a lot of like, you look at the movies at that time. There's a lot is bro humor. We were just still figuring out, what we were about. We were all just like horny kids. So it was a lot of like sex stuff, a lot of drug stuff, a lot of partying stuff, because that's what our sheltered lives were all about. But we were going back and like reading through some of these scripts. A lot of them were, you could see slivers of what I still find important in sketch. We did make sure like there were characters that cared about each other. There's a lot of stuff about relationships with parents and family. I mean, what I write now is a little bit more flipped. I take it from like a parent's perspective now, even though I have no kids, rather than from like a child's perspective dealing with weird parents. So we were just kind of figuring out what made us laugh, what was funny. And, it's interesting to see the evolution. As we went on, our sketches just got weirder and just bigger characters and kind of away from that sort of like bro-y stuff. So, at the end we had sketches with like, crazy sea captains hunting whales and, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I've written a sea captain sketch or two in my time. Love the sea captain sketch.
The ocean is full of fish and comedy.
Yes.
I think all white male comics get there eventually. Like you almost have to get that out of your system. The sea captain sketch.
Yeah, it's going Ahab. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so smells like the 80s. What comes next?
Yeah.
Well, I ran with the same crew for so long. And when you hit that natural point where everyone kind of just wants to go do their own thing, that's a big challenge. I mean, a lot of people just kind of drop off after that. I was lucky enough to, at that point, be fairly involved in the Toronto Sketch Comedy Festival. And I had met a lot of people. And what's great about these festivals is you get to watch a lot and you got to kind of figure out who is doing the kind of stuff that excites you or impresses you or surprises you. So out of that, I met this incredible comedian, Olivia Coburn, and she was in a similar situation. Her sketch troupe was dissolving, and so we said, "Hey, we're homeless right now. Let's team up and let's try to write some stuff." So that was awesome. Going from writing with three other men to writing with in a duo with women. So I really had to kind of change my writing style, and we could approach different sort of topics that we had done in our previous groups. And so I ran in that duo for a little while. I kind of bounced around with other people trying to figure out who I enjoy writing with until I fell into a larger group called Odat Dumb. And that was just, it was just people who were hanging around after a festival one night, and we all agreed that how funny would it be if we formed a troupe and just called ourselves the Gross Dudes and just had the word the Gross Dudes on every marquee and like pamphlet for the festival literature. And we're like, that's really stupid. We like this. Hey, let's try to write stuff. And that's where I'm the most comfortable well, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but I have the most fun as part of an ensemble. It's what I love most about sketch comedy as opposed to improv or stand-up. It's that group dynamic and bringing an idea into a group, watching it go through the group and coming out as something that nobody could have written on their own at the end, and something that is uniquely this group of like 5 or 6 people.
And so then
Odat Dumb was our first exposure to you at Montreal Sketchfest in 2017, I believe. We played in the same block.
How'd you find about Philly Sketchfest? Did you know the people before you went, or was this kind of like a whim? You came across it online and applied?
We had met a bunch of Philadelphia comedians who had come up to do Toronto Sketchfest, and every act that came up from Philadelphia just blew me away. Everything was just so it had a voice and was distinct, and it had a level of polish that you don't always see. What came up from Philadelphia were complete acts, if that makes sense. It wasn't like something that's still figuring it out. It knew what it was, and it did it well. And the people were all just so lovely. And of course I wanted to go down and, see their home turf and see what the rest of the people in the town were like.
When you say complete acts, I think we're going to get to this eventually. The difference between sketch comedy in Canada and sketch comedy in America, it seems like you were shocked by the Philly group. Is there a difference between the two countries?
Yes and no. I feel like Philadelphia is a bit of a sister city. We have a lot in common. In the same way that everyone in Canada comes to Toronto because they want to be in a place where they can break off and be big in the States, because this is the biggest market here, right next to a huge market, the United States. Philly is kind of like that, but like it's close to New York, but it's not New York. And people are like honing their skills there, getting ready for that next step. Does that make sense to you?
Definitely does. So it's like a hunger kind of thing of like people who are like trying to, better themselves for the next step. Is that what you see it as, or something?
Yeah, I think that's half of it. And the other half is there's time for acts to develop. I mean, we're talking about Smells Like the 80s and the first kind of stuff we rolled out. It was bad. It wasn't great. It was us cutting our teeth. But, I like to think there was potential there. In Toronto, there's only so many jobs and nowhere else to go in the country. So there's a lot of talent in the same place that has that time to work together and figure out what they are. And that's a gift that not every market has. It's I can't speak from experience, but I have the impression that in a place like New York or LA, there's a lot more opportunities to sell yourself and a lot more entry level positions. So when you get a job, you're not going to run with your sketch troupe doing weekly shows for 10 people at the Magnet. You're going to go and do this job. So your path with the sketch troupe dies pretty early. So there's a lot of groups that get together and don't get that, hit that 3-year mark where they really, are a well-oiled machine.
Have you noticed a tonal difference between America?
Supposed to be a well-oiled machine by year 3.
A more oiled machine, hopefully. Hopefully you find some more oil over those first couple years.
Do you find there to be a tonal difference between Canadian and American sketch comedy?
I mean, you're coming from different backgrounds. You're exposed to different influences, and of course, that's going to give a different flavor. I definitely think it just comes more of demographics, and sort of the mix of demographics you have in your group. That's going to, determine what your tone is going to be. So, I could watch an act like unless they're dropping very specific references, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint if they're from Canada or from the U.S.
Got it. Now, you mentioned in your
specific references is going to be kind of a theme of this show.
Yeah.
Well, foreshadowing.
Yeah, what?
You mentioned your involvement with Toronto Sketchfest. What's that all about? Tell us about, for maybe our listeners who wouldn't know, what is Toronto Sketchfest and what's your involvement like in that? What's that like?
I'm just going to say this. I think Toronto Sketchfest is the best sketch comedy festival that's operating right now.
That because they keep rejecting us. Is that what keeps them the best?
Yeah, so they're honest. They're
Yeah, they keep the riffraff out, Andy. Obviously,
they're the most wonderful gatekeepers in the community. No, they are very artist focused. They're a charity first and foremost. So their mandate is to help develop artists, performance opportunities, and to pay everyone, which we all know doesn't happen everywhere you travel. It was founded, what are we, like in year 15 of the Toronto Sketch Comedy Festival. The founders were in a sketch troupe called Boiled Wieners. They went down and did Chicago and were just kind of blown away by this organization and troops getting to cross-pollinate. And they said, we got to come back to Canada and start something. And it started very humbly. It's in the back room of a bar over 2 nights, and 6 troops were booked in year 1, and then I came on in year 2 as a volunteer for the festival because I wanted to find out what it was all about. And then year 3, I was performing with Smells Like the 80s, and they're so focused, and they're such great leaders and business people, and they've just been able to grow this into a much larger thing where we can afford to bring in a bunch of amazing headliners to kind of give that clout to the festival. And we can bring in 6 troops from the States and pay them so that they're not losing all their money to perform 2 shows in Toronto. It's an incredible festival. I worked with them for a couple years, doing programming, kind of being their artist liaison on site. That was a wonderful experience. And now I'm just, a friend of the festival. I'm lucky enough to have been accepted, every year since year 3. And they've been giving me amazing opportunities to do, some solo Cam Wyllie shows and putting me in big old venues and letting me really flex my muscles and, punch above my weight and rise to the occasion.
That's awesome. And I have to say, I've seen some of your solo things before, but Isaiah and I were talking about this the other day. Your sketch about struggling to not eat your saxophone, one of my favorites. A very, very funny sketch. What was the premise of that one entirely? What was the?
It was. It was based off just like a dumb tweet. I love Twitter for writing and just putting dumb one idea premises out in the world, and then like scrolling through my feed later and being like, okay, what's bulky enough to hold more than one joke? And I think the tweet was like,
the hardest thing about playing a trumpet must be putting it to your lips and not being able to eat it. And so it was a simple premise. It was just a guy thinking he was suave, bringing a date home and then trying to impress them by playing the trumpet for them, and then just struggling with wanting to eat this trumpet and not wanting to be a trumpet eating monster in front of this potential romantic partner.
And are you a trumpet player? Do you?
Oh no! Like when you see me struggle to play a trumpet on stage, that is that is completely true. But like the first time I did it, I was so nervous because I've never touched a trumpet in my life. So, I went and like rented a trumpet a month before my show, and I'd be walking around the neighborhood going for walks at night with just the mouthpiece, trying to like work on my embouchure so I could get a noise out of it. Because it's harder than you think to get a noise out of a trumpet. It's you don't just blow into it. You got to like get those vibrating lips. And I'm like, I can't go on stage and just like blow silence. I got to get at least some awful squeaks out of this thing.
So
I now want to know what neighborhood you live in that like you can walk around with a piece of a trumpet in your mouth and just everyone's just like, oh hey Cam,
what's
going on?
It's the Roncesvalles trumpet man. He's harmless.
I think that's a Hey Cameron situation. That's a Hey Cameron situation.
Yeah, were you practicing as Cam or as professional man Cameron Wyllie?
I think in that I make a bit of a difference when I'm on stage being like a lunatic. I'm Cam Wyllie, but in my real life, when I'm a functioning adult who's very good at living and has a career, I'm Cameron Wyllie. So I think in that moment, I'm Cameron Wyllie because I'm practicing and doing a responsible thing for my art. If I was just doing it for fun, then that's a Cam Wyllie thing. Who's like, why would I spend all this money on a trumpet when I can just get the mouthpiece and enjoy it?
Before we jump off, I just want you, Cam, to talk about your YouTube and the videos you do. You're a video guy. You're always putting up video content, and it's good. It's really good. So talk about the recent stuff you did this past year.
Yeah, well, my career is I work in like commercial production. I do post-production. I'm a director. When I laid into a career, all I wanted to do was make my own comedy TV show. So I wanted to learn the skills so I could just make my own stuff. And now I'm at a place where, I own enough gear. I have enough knowledge to do things at like a pretty good level. There's always room for improvement, but I know what the pitfalls are and how to avoid them. So I'm very lucky that I'm able to make my own stuff and without having to beg people for gear or help or money. We're in the pandemic and we can't do live shows anymore. So just trying to find like outlets for your comedy or like trying to do enough stuff so you still feel okay calling yourself a comedian. I've only produced a couple pieces. Morale's been low, and so I really have to like love an idea to kind of like get started. And of course, once I get started, I fall in love with what I'm doing and remember like, oh yeah, this is the best. So I think over the last year, I've done like 3 pieces that I'm pretty proud of. I produced this is a reference that's not going to hit here. I produced an episode of a TV show called Telefrancais.
I love Telefrancais.
Do you know what Telefrancais is?
My middle school French class taught us with Telefrancais.
That's exactly the Canadian experience. Here in Canada, French, of course, our second official language. So every kid in school has to learn French. And the teaching tool is a television show called Telefrancais. which features a talking pineapple teaching rudimentary French to children.
My wife and I are constantly saying to each other, "La na na pow, la na 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 pow pa."
I mean, look it up. It looks like it's something that shouldn't exist. It's a bit of a nightmare show, but it's a real thing that's deeply ingrained in Canadian society. So I made.
I was just going to say, I like that the mascot is a pineapple, fruit that is associated both with Canada and with the French language. I think that was a really good, really logical choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the talking maple leaf didn't test well, so.
My French teacher would show us that, but then always caution us. She's like, "But this is not like a traditional French Parisian accent. This is very much like Quebecois French. Just keep that in mind as you're watching it." It's like I am never going to get to a level of French fluency where anyone cares if I'm using a Quebecois or a traditional French. It's just never going to happen, and so I don't care, and I'm just going to watch this talking pineapple and do my goddamn best.
I think the idea is that you go to Paris as an American, and you're trying to be good, you're trying to speak French, and they're looking down on you because you're American, and then you come out with your Quebecois accent, and they just sniff and turn away.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I thought I disliked you.
Is that accent? No,
I thought I disliked you before. Yeah. Now you're both Canadian and Quebecois.
So you produced an episode of this.
Yeah, it's a full 5 to 6 minute, made as authentically as possible, recreating all of their little segments they throw to cartoons and puppet music videos. So I made one that's just a little more adult and a little more just kind of addressing the weird reality of what would it be like to actually have a talking pineapple in an adult's life, because all kids in the original. So that was a fun one, and it hit a real nostalgic nerve with people, so people really enjoyed that. I made a little animated, half animated one about the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt working at Subway and how much of a nightmare it would be trying to order a sandwich from him. And that was a fun one. Just a lot of keyframing on the jaw to make him talk. And then I put out the first episode of a web series I'm working on called How It Work. And that's pretty much a nice distillation of what the Cam Wyllie persona is about. It's
so good.
He's a high status buffoon, just talking nonsense that with such confidence in a way that it feels believable, following his big jumps in logic. But when you stop and think about it for even a second, you're like, no, this guy is wrong. Why is he trying to teach us this? So the first one, I worked very hard to get it to 2 minutes and 20 seconds so I could post it wholesale on Twitter. And it's just figuring out why onions can be sold for 30 cents a pound. How can onions be so cheap when so much work goes into growing one? So it's a crash course in economics, and I encourage everyone to go check it out. Invest those 2 minutes.
All right, well, let's get into our sketches for today. We're going to start with Gungan Style, open parenthesis, Gangnam Style Parody, close parenthesis. Now, Cam, you brought us this sketch. Why did you bring us this sketch?
When I started thinking about what sketch I wanted to bring today, I just kind of wanted to go back and figure out stuff that influenced me. And there was one recurring theme that I kept noticing in the 3 I was debating sending. And I think this one, I'll talk about it after, what that theme was, but this one kind of hit it the best. And I think this was more of an influence on me than I realized at the time. So this is one that's lived in my mind for a while. And I just wanted to share it again because I think it's phenomenal.
Great. Well, here's a clip.
Gangnam Style, yeah, sexy layup.
And that's what I get so far.
So why are you doing this?
Oh, that Gangnam Style song's really popular, and Star Wars stuff always does well online, so.
Sorry, I meant more generally. Why are you doing this with your life?
I mean, I'm just trying to do something topical.
So is this what you want out of your career? Is this what you've always aspired to do?
I just wanted to be a novelist.
All right, Cam. So you mentioned before we listened to the clip, there was a heavy theme in what you were deciding between what you wanted to choose. So I think, in some ways the theme of this, can be pretty clear. But what grabbed you about this one? What grabs you about this one?
I remember the feeling the first time I watched this, like the jaw dropping, like the twists, the turns was so magical to me. And it's something that you can see in my shows. It's something that I love. It's creating a reality that you make people accept and just say, oh yeah, this is the world. And then just deconstructing how horrific this reality really is. This video starts off with this pretty like mildly funny video. It's like a 3 out of 10 funny, but it's produced so well, and it had a budget and a whole crew of people working on it, and so much effort went into this thing. And then we kind of peel back that layer and see the people who are building this thing, and then asking the question, so this is what makes you happy, huh?
Yeah, right. And
then going down into that sad existential world. I love sadness in comedy. It's the best thing. Sadness and laughter, they're just the two sides of the same shower curtain. They're right there next to each other, and just something that can weave back and forth in between them it's always a 10 out of 10 for me. And this video, I think, does it really well. Because it gets sadder and then sadder, and then it makes you feel hopeful, and then it just goes back even sadder, and it ends on sort of, it's presented very happily with like the music and the smiles, but it's like this man's legacy is an even hackier video that no one in the room is interested to watch. And in his last moments where he will be remembered, no one cares about it. And that's the sum of his life. And that's, as a creator myself, that's something I think about a lot. Like, what will I be remembered for? How disposable is my work? And how have I wasted my life doing all my silly little Trumpet Man sketches? Maybe, but I like doing them.
I was going to say, though, at the very end, it seems that he's posthumously satisfied with what he's produced. Like there's one guy who maybe seems like he's slightly interested, and then the creator's Force Ghost shows up and nods as though he's satisfied at what he's seeing.
Great callback. It's a great callback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's the thing where it's the video is telling you one thing, but when you stop and think about it for a second, like, wait a minute, no, this shouldn't make him happy. He's delusional right now. This, maybe he is, but should he be happy with it? I don't think so. I think he should still be pretty upset.
I think that also leaves it open to the question of whether there's another level of reality that we're dealing with that hasn't been shown to us, because it's a Force Ghost. Are we supposed to go, okay, well, yes, his Force Ghost appeared in what we're considering to be the reality of this sketch, or is he, as you said, delusional, and now he's imagining this part of it somehow?
Seth, I need you to get out of the house.
No. EK, I wrote about stuff like this when I was in grad school. It's there. It does. And besides, I never leave the house anyway. That didn't change. I was like, oh, I have an excuse now. Ha
I looked up that Batman that I used to know. I don't think it's a real sketch.
No, there was a Star Wars that I used to know, though.
I'm saying he made that to be in the show. He made a sketch for the sketch.
Yeah,
it's
he wrote
perfect.
2 sketches for the sketch.
Oh God, I love that.
What's an even more forced reference into a song that's popular at the time, and just a Batman that I used to know is so funny. The idea that this exists for like 3 minutes with just such a thin premise and just listing off references, not even jokes,
Yeah.
It's
one of my favorite. I think my favorite line of dialogue in the whole sketch is when the guy running the conference room says he remembered for his passion for topical comedy, which is just like such a dig. It's like, it is a statement, but it is in some ways, the way he says it makes it sound so horrifically insulting. And they even have that fake splash at the end of like, watch other topical things before it goes to like at the very end of the video.
Mm-hmm. That's something I really respect too. If you slow it down, there are more extra jokes baked into this screen. And if you look over at Plugging My Work Again, How It Work, you got to hit pause along the way. Every time you see a screen, there's something in there trying to imply more about the world that this exists in. And so I love when a video does that, when they just use little tools like that to do a bit of world building.
So I want to ask you, I mean, are you even set it up in the email that you sent us, sending us this sketch? You like, your first note is that it takes 50 seconds to get to what's happening, or to get to the actual game of the sketch. How, like, when you're writing something, how do you approach like how long you can kind of sandbag the audience in a way, or set them up before you actually get to the joke or get to the game? Because, there's some schools of thought, like, like if you take like a UCB approach to this is like so late in the sketch to talk about anything funny. Mm-hmm. So like when you're writing, how are you thinking about that?
It's, I respect the hell out of this video for doing it. One of my favorite things is when I would show people this video, I say, this is amazing, you have to watch it. And then just this look of like disdain for the first 50 seconds, like, why are you making me watch this garbage? But that just is what makes it, you're building that tension and that emotion. So when it flips, there's just a much bigger release. And that's deadly to do on video because it's so easy just to like click away or click next. When you're doing a live show, you have a little more leeway because, an audience is often in a theater where they're in a comfortable seat, so they can kind of just zone out if they want. No harm, no foul. But also there's just more of a presence. People want to watch when you're set up for a show. So even if it's slow, you have more time, you can be a little more patient, but it's all about building the correct emotion and the tension necessary for the turn and getting the result you want from the turn. What do you need to set up to make that moment impactful? And, if you can do that in 20 seconds, you're golden. If it takes a little longer, then that's okay as well. And if you need to do 2 minutes of bullshit so that your turn is incredible and out there and it's such a release, then you take those 2 minutes, and because no one's going to remember those 2 minutes. They're going to remember that moment when they were just like, their jaw hit the ground, like, oh, this is what it's about. That's what they're going to remember from the show. So, the more you perform, the more your sketch IQ builds, the more you understand what that time needs to be. But there's no rules. It's whatever serves that emotional moment the best.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I mentioned it before, and kind of, question for anyone, but like, they're kind of, there is this through element of mocking topical comedy, but like, what is, especially as sketch comedians who aren't on Saturday Night Live being a weekly show, like, what is the role of topical topics, in sketch comedy? Is it like, I know it's something that we, like Bad Medicine, generally tries to avoid. Certainly in the last 4 years, the topical zeitgeist changed so often. Like what was newsworthy changed so quickly that it was really hard. So I don't know, what is the role of topicality in comedy, or in sketch comedy, probably?
Right. I mean, I write topical jokes, but they go on my Twitter and they're disposable. It's when I want to say something about what's going on. I get it out in the world in a place where people can see it. It's out of me. Perfect. I can move on. I look at it in a similar fashion to you, Andy. I try to avoid it for shelf life reasons. If there's something that I love, I don't want it to have to go away. One of my favorite sketches of all time is it's a sketch following 3 hench people who work for Carmen Sandiego, and just kind of breaking down the reality of what does it mean to steal the Eiffel Tower? What would that look like? Carmen Sandiego asked me to steal the Grand Canyon. How do I steal a hole? I just left a bigger hole when I took it out. But even something like that, like we performed that for like 5 or 6 years, and you could tell, like, there was an audience when we first started who knew Carmen Sandiego from the classic video game. And then there was a group after that who knew Carmen Sandiego from the kids game show. And then there came a generation who had no idea who Carmen Sandiego was. And then, the longer that went on, the less people understood the world of Carmen Sandiego. So that had to go on the shelf. And I miss it dearly because it was real silly and sweet.
There's a Netflix show now.
But you can't bring it back because she's not the villain in that. She's the good guy.
Oh.
Yeah. So she doesn't actually steal monuments.
I mean, Seth, is someone who teaches important lessons about geography ever really a villain?
I'm going to say yes because of the Sudetenland, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Right.
But there is room for topical humor, though. There definitely is. It all comes down to like what do you want to say as an artist? What is important to you? And if you want to talk about what's going on now and you have something to say, then you say it, and it doesn't matter if it's like doesn't make sense in a year. You want to get a message out into the world right now, so you attack what's important to you. And I don't know if it's I think it definitely is something. With my privilege, I can afford to just kind of be silly and have silly sketches kind of just follow me around. But you say what's important to you, and your art reflects who you are.
Do you actually think this is a topical sketch, though?
I think it's parodying topical sketches.
Well, when did it come out?
Oh, I didn't think it was a topical sketch at all.
2011. Well,
okay.
Yeah, topical insofar as at that time, this was a popular song and Star Wars is popular, so let's just mash up these two popular things together.
People were doing that. A lot of people were doing it.
No, but I mean, the structure of the sketch, like those are, you could swap out the Gangnam Style parody and the other song. Like those could be any elements. Like the real meat of the sketch is that crisis in the middle where it's just like, have I just been completely wasting my life doing this?
What I was getting at though was that the crisis is about making, or at least in some ways is about his life being reduced to making topical comedy. And like that's
I guess maybe I'm projecting my own comedy crisis onto it, where I'm just like, every time my mom is just like, how's your little skit group going? I'm just like, am I wasting my life? Like, I own a house. I have a retirement plan. What am I doing? What am I doing with my time?
I feel like responding to her mom, I'm a lawyer, might put that down.
I have to say that every other day. I'm just like, I have 2 graduate degrees. I have not wasted my life, Mom, just because I'm in a little skit group.
But this is incredible. Like here we are a decade later after this sketch came out, more or less, I think, and it's still relevant. It's an evergreen sort of concept. Like, is an artist's life wasted? That's a huge question. Yeah. And I'm sure they weren't thinking about that when they made it, but they just knew it was funny to question, they're sitting around at Funny or Die making videos that they probably think are garbage. And like, let's write something about that, how we feel.
Should we maybe at this point all just like listen to the Talking Heads once in a lifetime and just sort of just try to use that to get okay with ourselves? Is that a good place to go?
Is this sketch inside baseball? Is this a sketch for sketch comedians?
Absolutely, it is a sketch that appeals to artists, but I think it's broad enough that people can understand the message and apply it to their own life. But it definitely appeals to comedy writers because it's a little inside, but it's it's specific, but it's accessible, which is the sweet spot for a sketch.
I would agree, and I think I watched this with my wife, and she has done some comedy stuff, but not a big thing for her. And for her, it was like a reflection on, she was talked about afterwards, just the work that she does. And like, she works for the federal government doing grants. Like, she does an important job, but she still was sitting there thinking like, is this, it just causes you to think and reflect, which I think is a sign of really good comedy. And not all comedy has to cause you to think and reflect. You should just be able to just laugh at some things, but
your comedy has never made me think.
Really great. What did you say?
Shots fired. Shots fired.
I missed it, and perhaps I'm glad I did.
No,
yes, you are. You can.
Don't worry, Andy. Your comedy has never made me think.
That's because we never got to perform dildos.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It is my most thinkery sketch, and it's intentionally titled dildos.
I'm joking, Andy. I'm joking.
Yeah.
So for this sketch, once you get past the parody point and you're in the middle of it, what are the jokes? What's the funny part? Is it his reaction? Is it the guy saying, "What did your father accomplish at your age?" Is that the joke? Or is him reacting to everything kind of the thing you're laughing at as it's just going through?
It's that's a great question, because it's the turn going from that confidence of like, I'm proud of this dumb thing I made, into exposing that reality and kind of seeing like these additional layers of like sadness and weight put on them. And you're not so much, it's not a laugh, but it's like, it's funny because like, oh no, how much worse can it get? Oh no, that's a good point. Oh, this poor guy. Oh no. And you're kind of like, your hands are up and you start to go inward, and then you see him like take all these pills and smash his head, and you're like, oh God, no. And then it's that emotional journey. Then there's the release when you go back into the room with him and his boss. But that's just another fake out, which and you're laughing because you're releasing all of these like all of these pent up emotions in you. Like the laughter is really used as a release tool to deal with these sort of like these scary emotions coming at you, because it's sad and it's scary. But it's a fun journey, and it's still safe somehow.
One of the things I really love in this sketch is how layered it is. As you're getting at, you have the first video, the first Gangnam Style parody. Then you have the conversation. Then you have is it a dream sequence? We later learn, no, it's not. But like the pills and the death. Then it's back to the office. Then it's to the hospital. Then it's to the conference room. Then it's the Force Ghost. And it's the kind of thing that like one lends itself fantastically to video. And because sometimes that's something you're thinking about, like, is this something I could produce on stage?
Yeah.
This would be hard to do. You'd have to be projecting something, maybe. I don't know. It would be tricky. But this sketch is incredibly layered, but also incredibly easy to follow. And that is a really hard line to figure out that I think this sketch does really well.
There are a ton of jokes in it, though. They're just like, to your point about layers, they're visual jokes. Like when he's looking back over his catalog and he's sort of wavering the mouse over funny or die, and he clicks die. And then when he's taking the pills, he really only takes a couple of pills and he slams it with a can of Coke. Like, they're just like the little details that like, this is so dumb. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
how you're going to go.
That's a huge joke too. It's like, it's such a serious response over to something that's maybe not worth it. It's like, you don't like your job, or you're going to kill yourself.
Well, speaking as the oldest member of Bad Medicine, sometimes you look at your life and what you've done with it. You really think about what you're going to have a chance to do in the near future, and you sit, you think, and sometimes you just wonder why. And that's what the sketch makes you do.
I need you to leave the house.
Let's talk about
I need you to go for a walk in the sun.
I was outside yesterday. It's fine. Look, I'm just having a midlife crisis. It's okay. It just happens to coincide with a pandemic. There's no problem.
Before we move on, can we just talk about like the Nick Weigler, I think is his name. Weigler. Weigler. It would have been a nice companion piece to do with this one, but I completely forgot he was in that like incredible sketch group back in the day, Kiss from Daddy through UCB. It was like him and Harris Whittles and the guy who would later be the accountant in You're the Worst. Just like an incredible group, and like they've all since gone on. I mean, Harris Whittles, rest in peace, unfortunately, but they've all, and Paul Russ, like they've all gone on to do like really incredible stuff. So a nice epilogue to a sketch where he kills himself over his career in comedy.
Yeah. In real life, doing very well for himself with a great body of work. Yeah.
First times can be awkward for everything, including comedy. So why not look back at a comedy writer's first attempt at making an audience laugh? From Philly Sketchfest, have a listen to My First Sketch, the podcast introducing you to sketch comedians from around the world, starting with their first sketch. Hosted by me, Josh Hyam, we'll explore how a writer got started, what shaped their sense of humor, and where they go from here. Check out My First Sketch at myfirstsketch.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Well, yeah. So let's move on to our next sketch, which is from Saturday Night Live. It is the Blue Jean Committee. This is a sketch that I found because I watch a lot of sketches on YouTube. I get suggested a lot of sketches, and this was just a random one that I was watching something and it showed up on the side, and I like Jason Segel, and I think he was in the little still, and so I opened it up and watched it and was confused and in love. So here's a clip.
And it's a it's a coincidence that this is Massachusetts based and that sketch.
I mean, as a son of Massachusetts.
Wait. So you had not seen this? Had you seen Documentary Now? At this point?
No, I've only seen bits of Documentary Now. I'd never seen this one. And this predates Documentary.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
No, I know. I just didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, is the Blue Jean Committee in a Documentary Now episode?
Yeah, there's a whole episode. The sketch is from 2011 or something. And then they did
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
My dad and I are watching that together, so that's gonna be great when we get there.
Yeah. This sketch had been on our list. We have a long list of sketches we should talk about. This sketch has been on there for a while, and I just thought it was odd enough that we needed time to pull this one out and talk about it.
But the prettiest of them all, without a shadow of a doubt, is a 6-foot-tall beauty named Lucia. She's got them big hazel eyes that make the boys go crazy like. But this boy right here kept his cool in the heat of the moment when he opened the door for her as she stepped into Mikey's bowling lanes. You've never seen so much chivalry, one broke-ass Northampton city kid. And I'm talking about Massachusetts afternoon, hanging out on the porch, drinking cinnamon beer with you. All right, Massachusetts afternoon.
So let's start. I think start broad, and I know it's sometimes our least favorite question to ask on this show. But is this sketch a sketch? Is it? Cam, you look like you had a strong reaction to that question. What?
Yeah, I watched this. I watched this clip just now, and of course, I watched it in its entirety yesterday. And that was sort of my question that I came away with. For me, my big question was, what is the joke here? And I don't know that it's so much a joke so much as they're presenting a feeling and a mood. And I think my takeaway was it's okay to feel nice and to enjoy things and to really enjoy things that are objectively mediocre, and leaving with that feeling of niceness. Because we all have these little pleasures where we know it's not great, but we get into it and we leave feeling wonderful because of this thing, it's your early evening, you're at a dive bar, you're seeing okay local band, but you're having the time of your life because you got a beer in your hand, you're with your buds, and that's a 10 out of 10 night. It's more than the sum of its parts.
It's the Margaritaville of sketches.
Okay. Yeah. But if I may pose another question,
please.
Wasn't Fruit Blood a sketch? Because this is, to me, I watched this and I'm like, this is mellow, more popular Fruit Blood.
But Fruit Blood had visual jokes going throughout it.
Well, so did this. What Paul Rudd shows up, the Muppets show up,
For me,
everybody's looking at the camera.
Thing in this sketch. Bobby Moynihan going,
Andy,
really getting into it.
Seth was talking.
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. Because honestly, no, seriously, I watched this sketch and all I could think of was Fruit Blood, to the point where I watched Haircut
I don't even remember Fruit. Oh my God! Now I remember. Fruit.
There you go.
We talked about it on the show.
Oh, I hated Fruit Blood.
There we go. But
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Which we did in like maybe the first 10 episodes.
It was an early episode.
Sketch.
Yeah, it's an animated sketch. It's a band, and it's just this band playing a bunch of weird music in a bar, and then sort of you see random weird famous people like Stripe or whatever his name is, the bad gremlin from Gremlins is there. And there's a placard that says this table reserved for Princess Diana. I think at the last sketch, there's a skeleton sitting at the table. But they do a whole bunch of weird visual stuff while this avant-garde band plays on stage. And I was watching this and I'm like, this is just it's more mellow for some reason. And I don't know why they it seemed like they were kind of making fun of the band Chicago. That's
it's the whole like yacht rock.
It's the whole it's yacht rock for sure.
I mean, they go on later, like when they get into when they actually do more detailed background, when they go on to develop this into like the documentary now parody. But it's really they're targeting the Eagles specifically.
Oh, okay. All right.
So much so that I think in documentary now, actually, the guy who is their manager was actually the manager for the Eagles.
Wow.
Nice. Awesome. But it was also, I think the joke for me kind of was that Kristen Wiig introduces them as their band. They've got their first national tour coming up, and all they do is make specific references to stuff in Boston. And I'm like,
in Northampton, which is
Northampton. I'm very sorry, Andy. I'm very sorry. But yeah, so this band is going to go out on their national tour, and they're going to have this mellow vibe, and they're going to be talking to people who have no idea what they're talking about.
And it's a great song too. It's a catchy song. It's been stuck in my head. The drinking cinnamon beer with you. It's a great little line.
And they're playing real instruments. That's a Fred thing. Fred does that. Real instruments, real song.
I couldn't tell if Jason was actually playing the drums, but the rest of them are all actually playing.
He was on keyboard, I think.
Keyboard, yeah.
There's two Jasons.
Oh, there's two Jasons.
Right.
That's right.
Sorry, Jason Sudeikis. I wasn't sure if he was actually playing the drums. Jason Segel was playing the keys. Another great little thing, which I think was just a mistake, is Keenan accidentally singing a little line when there's a break, right? There's like a rest for the rest of them. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. And now, Cam, this has an appearance. You recently ran a contest on most popular Muppets, everyone's favorite Muppets, and the Muppets appear in this sketch. What did you think of that?
I figured the Muppets must have been there for some reason on Saturday Night Live, and they just like, yeah, why not? Let's put them in there.
Coincided with him writing the Muppet.
This is around the Muppet movie, so of course it made sense for them to show up to promote the Muppet movie. It's fine. It was like out of that context, it felt weird to see them there. It's like, oh, Muppets, I guess. Sure. But let's talk about the use of songs and music in sketch, because this is one of the. This was just a song. There was a 10-second setup and then a song, and that was the whole scene. I love using music in sketches. I love doing sketches that are songs. Music is such a cheat code for sketches. It immediately tells the audience what kind of emotional feel you want. And the structure of a song, it's verse, chorus. You have that repetition in there, and repetition is such a huge thing in sketch comedy. I try to sneak repetition into as much as I can because when the audience leaves, you want them to repeat a line and remember something. And using a song as a way you can repeat that chorus again and again without it feeling tagged on or like crammed in there. People expect that from structure of a song. So, I mean, even when we started talking about it, the first thing we said is like, yeah, it's a catchy song, afternoon, because we heard it 4 times.
Yeah, right. And what I like about the music in this sketch is that it's not quite like a funny song. Like there are some lines in the song are kind of silly, but the song itself is like you said, it's a vessel to set the mood and to play up the contrast, I think, between the way the audience is reacting to what this song is. And I think it's a really interesting way to use music in a sketch rather than, because I'd written funny songs before, and I was in a comedy a cappella group. And so that's like, but that whole thing is just like telling jokes in songs. And that's not what this was, which I really liked. It's like, it's interesting. And I think, as you emphasize, it creates a mood, it creates an idea. And then they play with that. And you play with your expectations.
There are jokes in the song.
Yeah, there are jokes in the song, but it's not like you're like waiting to hear what's the next line in this song as a joke. It's kind of like some of these specific references, but I wouldn't call this a funny song.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a Weird Al song, parody or original.
Now, for the show documentary now, when they did the 2-part episode, they did make an album. It's on Spotify. You can listen.
I was listening to it before we actually.
Yeah. Those songs have more jokes in them, where it's a song, it's a parody of that style from that era, but the lyrics are funny in some way, or telling a story, or trying to do something where it should make you giggle as you listen to it. So definitely go on. We'll put a link in the podcast notes, but definitely check it out.
You didn't think the song was funny at all? Like the reference to like the 6 foot tall lady with the Northampton legs? Like,
the gifted lyricist parts where they break and they talk and then they start singing, that to me was funny. The cutaways to the different people reacting, Andy holding milk and drinking it, like stuff like that to me made me laugh more than the song itself. So the song jokes were little jokes, and everything else was the spikes for me. And so it was harder for me to be like, all right, let me hear what they're saying. I was more like looking for the next joke than I was listening for the lyrics.
Yeah, it's like when you break down a sketch, like I'm talking mostly for my work, every scene usually has like 2 to 4 big jokes, big moments, and then you just hang all these little jokes off them as connective tissue. Like the jokes in this scene all felt like those sort of like connective jokes, like adding more flavor, more depth. Like I have a hard time pinpointing like what are these big jokes that are in this sketch? What is the story being told? It's all a bunch of like little funny things. Yeah, the 6-foot woman they're all talking about, singing about cinnamon beer like it's a thing everyone knows. It's like, no, that's not a beer I drink. It's very specific.
It's a bunch of place writing love letters to you.
Yeah, it's everything is like pleasant and charming, and I had a smile on my face throughout the whole thing. You're seeing other people enjoying music. That's a great feeling, but I still struggle to say like what are they trying to say with this?
But was it, and this is probably background research we should have done as we're talking about it now, but like it seems like it's a sketch that may have been a function of like its context in the broader show and in the lineup. So, I mean, is it a sketch that was ever really meant at that juncture to stand on its own? I don't know.
I mean, this sketch in a live show, it couldn't be a closer. I mean, maybe it could, depending on what you want the show to be like, but it's definitely got a place in like, as kind of like a palate cleanse in the middle of the show. If you just do something like really dark and you want to like get the audience feeling good, this definitely would make an audience feel great. They'd get into the song and they're ready for what's next.
I think you also have the possibility, if you wanted to, of making this kind of a runner where you start with this and then you track the career of the Blue Jean Committee over the course of the show.
Oh, you mean like they did in Documentary Now? So?
Yes, I'm assuming that's what they did in Documentary Now. But like if you broke this up into a few sketches, you'd have this at the beginning, you'd have another one where you see they're having problems, you'd have the breakup sketch, and then you'd have the reunion sketch at the end where they come back to playing.
It sounds like you're writing additional scenes that have the jokes in them.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like sort of like a jokeless scene that just introduces the concept of these characters, laying the base for future.
Yeah,
story.
I mean, and that's now I since I know that they're Documentary Now, but that's like it felt that way to me. And again, like I hate to keep doing this, but to go back to Fruit Blood, there are 7 different Fruit Blood sketches, and the payoff doesn't come till the last one.
Like sucks. No,
no. Fruit Blood is hard to compare because it's an animation, and every character is drawn. The whole thing is such a visual heavy joke laden sketch that even though the music is great and the music is funny, there's so much stuff happening visually, where I think this sketch is very Portlandia in a sense, where it's almost like a vibe in a sense. And that's the sketch. That's the joke, is this vibe where maybe in the pitch room, they're like these guys, like you said, EK, like they're going on tour and they're clearly setting themselves up for failure because their whole gimmick is local and now they're going on a national tour. That could have been it, but I think the vibe is really the joke. Being able to enjoy nice things is okay.
And now, this is obviously a very subjective question, but kind of after we've talked through all this, is this a good sketch?
I'm
it's subjective, but I'm curious about if people think this is a good sketch or not.
Well, I came away from it with a pleasant feeling. The minute you said there was Documentary Now episodes, or there were Documentary Now episodes, I got excited, and I just bought the music. So, I mean, is it good? I don't know. Is it effective? Yes.
Okay.
You just spent money and gave it to them, so that's an effective sketch in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it totally depends on what is it totally clear and effective as a standalone timeless sketch? Probably not. But I think if it's in the context of like closing out a show where Jason Segel was hosting and it was to plug the Muppets movie, and there was like a Paul Rudd reference earlier from like, what's the movie they were in together?
I Love You, Man.
I Love You, Man. I mean, it's all just kind of like sewing all those elements together in the end of like kind of just a feel good, silly sketch.
Yeah, it definitely isn't a bad sketch. I didn't feel bad at all, or I didn't feel like I wasted my time watching it. Would I go back and watch it again? I have no urge to, but in 5 years, if someone says something that reminds me of that lyric, I might go look it up because I heard that chorus 5 times and it lives in my head forever now because it's a catchy song.
I did like that they cast cinnamon beer as like this summery, breezy porch pounder beer, and I'm like, no, that's not it, bro.
All right. Well, let's move on to the end of the show. Cam, thank you so much for coming on. Now, as we ask all our guests, could you come up with a rating system for how we're going to rate these sketches today?
Do we rate them using the same system, or does every sketch?
Using the same system, yeah. But oftentimes the rating system is based off of one of the sketches. That's totally...
Okay, I think we should give them a rating out of 10 failed artists.
Ooh.
All right, well, why don't you start? So for Gungan Style, Gangnam Style Parody, how many failed artists would you give this sketch?
This one lives in my Hall of Fame forever. I give it a 9.5 failed artists out of 10.
Nice. Seth?
That's a good question.
Wait, which failed artists? Like, are there failed
you wouldn't
artists
know them. They failed.
Yeah.
There's some people who failed very famously. Okay, there may be a point of reference here that we're not aware of. I just want to know, because like maybe failed artists 1 through 3 carry more weight for me as failed artists than like Cam's 7 through 10.
Okay, let's just pull out like 10 reserve members from the Polyphonic Spree or something. I don't know.
Okay. The dancing guy from Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
Another band from Boston.
You don't say.
Boston strong, Andy. Boston strong.
Jesus.
All right. So,
how's your football team, by the way?
I don't know. It's been really hard to have 6 since 2001.
I wasn't asking because I actually wanted an answer, Andy. I just wanted to see you twist and suffer.
Seth, how many failed artists would you give this sketch?
Okay, so I like it, but it also hits me right in the feels and takes me to a dark place. So I can't give it Cam's rating. I will give it an 8. I think 8 failed artists out of 10.
8. EK.
I'm gonna slot right in the middle, an 8.5 failed artists, just because similar to Seth, I have this feeling about what the hell I'm doing with comedy almost every single day of my life, but I have yet to take a bunch of pills followed with chased by a can of Coke to solve that problem.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
No. I'd do it with Pepsi, please, or like Mountain Dew, because I'm from the Midwest. All right, no, we shouldn't joke about that.
Even though the sketch did. I mean, it's fine.
I mean, even though I'm totally going to joke about it. Who am I kidding? I love jokes about death.
Thank you, Emily Dickinson.
the turn got me. I didn't see it coming. I always ask myself, like, what did my parents accomplish at the age that I'm at? It's a question that runs through my head all the time. I love the Jedi Ghost at the end. For me, it is a perfect 10 out of 10, just classic sketch. I give it 10 failed NBA rappers' careers.
Ooh, failed NBA rapper. Where does Dame Lillard fit on? Is he a failed NBA rapper? Or is he a good NBA rapper?
The only successful rapper is Shaq. Let's be honest.
What about? I was gonna say Shaq is kind of the go-to example. Here's what I don't understand about Shaq's rap career. He put out one album, and then the next album he put out was the best of Shaq. Like,
as long as both of them had the track "My Biological Didn't Bother," then I'm in.
What I would like is if the best of Shaq just rearranged the tracks.
Or it just cut 2 or 3 that they were like, in hindsight, like, nah, that wasn't Shaq's best work. We're just going to re-release 8 of the 10 tracks.
I think I would give this one, I think 9 for me. Like, I think we've kind of gotten at all the stuff that's great about it. And it just works so well. I love the layering in this sketch. All of these different beats, all these different layers, I really love. And his face at the end, whether it's a real emotion or not, the kind of the nod and the smile are great, and it puts a nice bow on it, bringing it back. Where it is so effective to find a great button for a sketch, and that's a great button for this sketch. And now
I will give the joke. He owned a house. Did he own a house? He did own a house. I will give that joke like 13 out of 10. 14. That's so good. So good.
Now you use the past tense there. And then for the Blue Jean Committee, I think we talked about this sketch. This sketch made me cackle the first time I saw it because it was just so different, because I feel like I'm watching so many sketches that are all about escalation and getting bigger. And, when we're teaching, that's what we're teaching. When I'm writing, that's often what I'm thinking about when I'm writing. And this just took a totally different tact. And I really love that. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 failed artists. Isaiah?
I was not a fan of the sketch the first time I saw it. I had to watch it a couple times to really get into it. I still think the biggest joke for me is the cut to Paul Rudd, which I don't think it's something that's written in the script. So it's.
I think those are all scripted. I think
Paul Rudd's not just going to be sitting there randomly on stage with a glass of milk in a wig.
So they probably says cut to someone, and they say, "All right, you're going to be number 2," but like no one was sitting down and say, "Hey, call Paul Rudd. We need to cut to him."
He was already on the show. We've established this.
So for me, I give it like a 6 out of 10. Failed Dancing with the Stars losers.
Okay.
Ooh, wait, including Tucker Carlson?
He was on there?
Yeah.
No,
Especially
I think we
him.
can safely exclude Tucker Carlson from everything.
Okay.
EK?
I'm going to opt out of ranking this one because, truth be told, I didn't have any recollection or awareness that it was a sketch before it was the Documentary Now parody. And so my vision of it, or my perception of it, is so colored by that I have trouble viewing the sketch independently.
Fair enough. Seth?
I'm gonna go ahead and give this one 7. 7 out of 10 as a sketch. I think the music goes somewhere else. And again, I am excited to watch the Documentary Now episodes, but I need to stress that 2 of those failed artists, one of them is Corey Feldman as a rapper. And that's right. And the other one is William McGonagall, a famously bad Scots poet.
That's my first thought when I think failed artists is
Wow.
William McGonagall.
Wow.
Look him up. He's terrible.
Old Billy.
It's the literary equivalent of smell this.
Yeah, it really is. It absolutely is.
All right. And Cam, what did you think?
I think this sketch started at a 7 and immediately just plateaued all the way to the end at that 7. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 failed artists. It's nothing groundbreaking, nothing overly memorable, but it's harmless, it's fine, and I was smiling the whole time. So it's a okay way to spend 5 minutes. 7 out of 10 failed artists, and I just want to say right now I'm looking at 0 failed artists. So great ranking on Sketch Nerds right now.
Mama, I made
it. You don't know me.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show.
Wait. Can we just point out for a second how Cam in particular managed to keep this particular episode very the discussion was very high value and substantive, and sometimes it doesn't go that way.
So we appreciate it, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
I guess you'll have to just lay some fart sound effects over every time I speak in post, just to really dumb it down.
And it's the sad trombone sound effect.
Yeah, if you want jokes, come see a Cam Wyllie show. I'm here to talk sketch.
Well,
it's you didn't pay me to be funny. I volunteered to come on and have an academic conversation. You want the goods, you cough up the money.
That's right. Yes. Know your worth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Cam, where can our listeners find you out in the world? Where, if they want to come find your comedy, what's the best place to do that?
Check me out at Cameron Wyllie on Twitter, and go find me on YouTube. If you go into your favorite search engine and hit Cam plus Wyllie plus YouTube, I'm sure I pop up in the first 10 results. It's me, it's a real estate agent in New York, and it's a Scottish child who collects monster cards. We're the only Cameron Wylies out there putting out content.
But who comes first? The real estate agent or the child or you?
No, I have the best SEO out there.
Okay.
So you have to dig a bit to find a little Scottish boy, but he's out there.
All right, well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Sketch Nerds. Thank you very much to our guest, Cam Wyllie. We had a great time having you on. Look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. For Seth Alcorn, Elizabeth E.K. Kemp, and Isaiah Hedden, I'm Andy Weld. Thank you for listening to Sketch Nerds.
This episode was produced by Isaiah Hedden and recorded in Washington, D.C. The closing music tracks were provided by SoundtrackForEverything.com. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act, Fair Use Exemption, for criticism and commentary. The Sketch Nerds podcast is brought to you by the sketch comedy group Bad Medicine, DC's best sketch comedy about the worst of humanity. For showtimes, videos, and funny t-shirts, please visit badmedicinecomedy.com.